Open your ears and lube up your butthole. It's time for the What Do We Call It podcast. Now, here's your host. It's Jmann. Welcome to the What Do We Call It podcast. I'm Jmann, and I've been thinking lately about the state of humankind and how things have gotten the last couple of years, and I'd like to think that the world has gotten only worse because everybody's just so goddamn divided and buried in their stupid devices. You know, we inhabit a world that's digitally connected 24 hours a day. We live on our phones, use social media to keep our brains entertained constantly, the way that alcoholics take a sip every few minutes throughout the day to keep their buzz going. And all people now have access to give all of us their opinions. They're free to put them out there into the ether, the internet at leisure, without a filter, for the most part, unless you're on YouTube, in which case, if you don't meet the criteria of what they deem to be okay to say, you're off. But with that freedom to speak your mind comes certain trappings, like an equal amount of reaction to every action. And those critiques, those judgments, the replies, the vitriol, the offense and sensitivity and subsequent filtering of information or push to censor it is all to make it comfortable for digestion. Case in point. I read an article from The Atlantic from 2015, and a very similar one in The New Yorker from 2021. They stated that trigger warnings do not prepare people who are sensitive to deal with difficult topics like intended. If anything, they actually cause a great deal of anxiety in people who are conditioned now to think that every little disagreement that they have is deserving of burning down the house of an ideal. So I'm going to say this without any trepidation. We have become a society of absolutely insufferable crybaby bitches. Now, let me tell you why I think that is. For at least a generation, we've told every child how special they are, forced inclusion and sensitivity, and overall tried to force the world to treat negative opinions and problematic ideas like a mess on the kitchen floor that needs to be cleaned up, because we cater to everyone's ego now to make sure that no one is offended. They've developed this sense of entitlement to being protected at all costs at all times. Colleges were once a bastion of critical thought, housing academic attitudes that we need to challenge young minds or they will not grow to full potential. And in current times, we have young adults who are barely removed from childhood dictating policy and forcing professors to walk on eggshells or be campaigned against for removal. Look what happened with Kathleen Stock at the University of Sussex in the UK. She held views that were called harmful to trans people, and a campaign of students pushed for her to be ousted until she just said, "Fuck this, I'm out," and she quit.
Fuck you, fuck you.
Now, the UK is looking at forcing colleges to be open to difficult ideas. Wow, what a concept. Not allowing speech to be censored. And more importantly, encouraging critical thought. And academia, where of all places, you're supposed to delve into things you don't understand and try to reshape your own beliefs. And much like with Professor Stock, we have Dave Chappelle, who for years has been running afoul of the trans mafia, who took issue with this preaching of a trans-exclusive radical feminist nature. Or at least just bringing it up, not even preaching. Simply put, both Professor Stock and Mr. Chappelle spoke about trans women not being equal to biological women. Netflix has now faced nonstop pressure to take down Chappelle's most recent stand-up special, The Closer, due to statements like, "Gender is fact." With Kathleen Stock, she made mention of how biological sex takes precedent over gender identity and that the latter should not be used to dictate law and policy, because people cannot change their biological sex. I have to say I tend to agree, and that's going to piss some people off. I mean, if you were born a woman and decide to live as a man, that's cool with me. I'm not saying don't. But scientifically, biologically, you still have female sex chromosomes. And I'm not just trying to go after trans people. That's not the point of this episode. It's more or less to bash people that have to be agreed with to feel comfortable. So, like with these students that got her to quit, and these people that push for Netflix to take the special down and try to get Chappelle canceled, or people that forced universities to not have conservative thinkers like Milo Yiannopoulos or Ben Shapiro. So there's these walkouts and these protests, and you can't be here. Well, why the fuck not? So we have these emboldened, delta-headed pussies, and they feel like anything they don't like or cannot agree with needs to be wiped out of existence and kept away from their fragile minds. And they think that doing so equates to saving the world and making it a better place for everyone. But all that's actually happening is that they've become the mom who finds her son's Playboys under the mattress and then throws them away. He doesn't stop liking to look at pictures of naked women as a means of facilitating stimulation. All you've done is take it away and tell him that his idea was inappropriate. So now he's just going to do the same thing, but he's not going to let you find out. You're driving him down underground into a rabbit hole, kind of like what happens with the radicalization of people with right-wing ideals. And suddenly you got a bunch of dickbags in Banana Republic button-up polo shirts standing around with fucking tiki torches. Where am I going with this exactly? Well, we have a country divided here in the United States. You're either this or that, left or right, anti or pro, and the middle ground, that is literally huge, keeps shrinking. And if you're not on their side, they don't look at you as an ally, they look at you as the enemy. And the problem with only being one thing without at least exploring what there is to appreciate about other options, plural, because in life there are almost always more than two, is that you don't give your mind a chance to really see what else is out there. You can't be pragmatic unless you explore both sides. Anyone that goes, well, I'm not gay. Well, you at least had to think about whether or not you'd be interested in dicks, right? Okay, well then you've considered it.
Hi.
So why do we get so incensed by people who share opposing views from our own? Because, deep down, we're spoiled. And we're given too much free rein to bask in the glory of what we think is right. Algorithms that feed us only similar-minded bullshit on Facebook. That in turn causes us to fear being wrong. See, if somebody says, you don't believe the right thing, we get offended, we go on the attack. So instead of them saying, you're wrong, they should say, I feel differently, let's discuss this. Otherwise known as polite intellectual discourse. So failure to have our egos coddled and catered to, or our beliefs affirmed, leaves us throwing these little crybaby tantrums like kids. By forcing the world to give us only constant positivity and agreement to safeguard us from difficult and uncomfortable information, we've become like children mentally. It's that simple, and it's time to admit it. Not getting our way used to disappoint people, but now they're enraged to the point of taking action against those who hold opposing views. I look at what happened on January 6th. They fucking attacked Congress. And you can say what you want if you're on the right side of the aisle that they're patriots, but they're really secessionists in my eyes. So only getting what we agree with seems to be what everybody has to have to feel comfortable. Someone said or did something we disagree with, so we must cancel them. We must destroy them. That's the only way we can feel better about it, is to make it so that that person has to forcibly clean up the, quote, mess that is their incompatible stance. And that solves everything, won't it? Getting rid of the, quote, harmful difference of opinion will surely be the answer to what we need in life, right? Instead of thinking outside the box or venturing beyond our own comfort zone, we must encroach upon the rights of others to bully them into submission and join our group think. That's all there is to it. We need everyone to agree, or we may feel like we're wrong, and we can't have that, can we? I'm dead serious that I think the majority of the people who lose their shit with the other side of an argument have devolved cognitively to a point where they can't even consider that they might be incorrect, because doing so would mean we lose. We get nothing. Good day, sir. Right? And trying to find a middle ground isn't easy, so why try? Just keep pushing further and further down the field to make everyone accept that what we think is best. Be the hammer that pounds the nails into submission, because if we don't acknowledge that what they believe holds any merit, we can't lose. By doing that, we maintain power and, more importantly, control over the narrative. There'll be no introspection, no deep thought and redevelopment of self. What we already know can be the only truth, and we will die on any hill to defend that mindset. We're fine just the way we are, and anyone who tells us otherwise is our enemy and must be discredited and conquered. Stories or ideas that represent anyone we don't agree with or like become this monolith that we must grab a bone and smash. No matter the amount of mental gymnastics to defend our own faulty, farcical seeming position, it must be victory at any cost, no matter what. And that's why we have phrases like alternative facts and fake news, because motherfuckers just can't admit that they're on some bullshit and they don't want to give up their position. The problem with that is when you stop pursuing knowledge of opposing viewpoints, you don't learn. And more importantly, you cease to grow intellectually. We are now living in the opening stages of what I believe is a cognitive dark age. The digital world is slowly causing us to do away with polite discourse and diplomatic debate. It's a war of the mind that we're all seemingly joining the fight for, and it will be the end of mankind. It starts with words, then moves to fists, then weapons, ending in mutually assured destruction. It may seem like a doomsday scenario to some, but that is the way that it goes. It just starts to snowball and get worse and worse. If we let censorship and political correctness force us to see everything we say and do as a possible microaggression, we end up walking on a path made only of eggshells. That is what those who shout the loudest aim to do. Shame us into submission and convince us that their way is best without hearing us out and deciding to meet in the middle. It is no way to live. And I know that last little paragraph there seems a little oxymoronic. I talk about how opposing ideas start with words, then fists, then weapons. And I'm saying we've got people with opposing ideas and we need to stop them from shutting us up. That's the funny thing about this is there's like two wars going on at once. The war against common sense, where nobody wants to meet in the middle, and then the war of I can't admit I'm wrong and try to see things your way. Again, mutually assured destruction. And how it relates to my own life is that over the years I have never shied away from difficult or taboo topics in real life or online or on this show. I refuse to smile and gobble up every plate of bullshit that's fed to me by someone who has authority over me. I will not accept that being vulgar and brutally honest are wrong, even if I'm facing a King Kong-sized amount of pushback. These people that want us to all bend to their wills and accept all this liberal nonsense or all this uber-conservative nonsense, you're both fucking wrong. And relying on force majeure is not how you find a way to move forward. Especially when an idea flies in the face of our own beliefs. And then you got people, they cry racism, sexism, ageism, transphobia, or religious intolerance. And they know this is going on and that it's wrong, so this is why they're so sensitive, out of fear of being caught losing their grip on the power to define social norms. That's why we only have two parties in this country playing fucking tug of war over power. They all think they know better and they don't want to give up any sort of power. What we don't have is two different parties as much as we have two different armies, considering all of their voting public and constituents as soldiers that have to do their bidding or else they're not good enough. Hence why anybody that was in the GOP that voted to impeach Trump either time is being blackballed or called unpatriotic or a weak member of the party. It's ridiculous. They have the ability to think for themselves, and you should always vote with your conscience, not just with the partisan line. And I cannot stress this enough. It's imperative to protect free speech, independent thinking, and to challenge people's views in an effort to grow, so they're not simply weak-minded followers. I mean, look at how all these kids today. You say one thing that upsets them, and they go all to pieces, and then you're the bad guy. It's not, well, let's focus on why they're upset and try to explain to them why it's okay to think differently. Because what they see on TV is people that don't agree with Black Lives Matter being called white supremacists or racists and saying, oh, well, you support the police, well, then you don't value black lives. The two things are not equitable. I'm sorry, but no. Once they take away our ability to express our varying ideologies without fear of punishment or social excommunication, then society as we know it will decline rather than thrive at an alarming rate. Like, I personally believe that the apex of humanity is behind us, and we're just riding the escalator downward. They talk about how societies or cultures can build up technologically and advance so much, and then you get to a certain point, and then it's just bam, you've topped out, and it collapses. Well, that's what we're looking at now, with our reliance upon the internet and our constant delving into social media to have what we already believe reaffirmed. How often you go out there and search out opposing views, versus just you saw it on Facebook in somebody's feed and now you're preaching it like it's the gospel and you didn't do any fucking fact checking. I cannot and I will not put up with people that try to force bullshit on me without checking their facts, because you are just morons. You are a part of the problem. And it's gotten so bad with this society's only going one way that now in Dubai they're testing out technology that they can set this device on a table during debates and an alarm will go off if they sense anything that's insensitive or triggering, forcing the people there to have to reconsider their beliefs. Well, we came to the debate to talk about our beliefs and why we feel that way or defend a position, not to be fucking slapped on the hand. It's either win or lose here. And I feel like they're marketing this to colleges especially because they want to force everybody to buy into their bullshit. Like you can't swear, or you can't make semi-disparaging remarks, or you can't even critique anybody without them being offended. Like, offense is the worst possible fucking thing. I'm pretty sure cross-burning, lynching, and rape out of power or ritualistic honor killing is way fucking worse than giving somebody a boo-boo on their ego. We have the power to stop the thought police and end cancel culture, but we need to be brave enough to not fit in while trying to do so. Like, an intellectual battleground is wide open right now, whether you recognize it or not. And this is more of like a wake-up call, not a call to action like, hey, let's go grab our AR-15s and show up at a government building and try to force somebody into not thinking the way they think. No, it's about discussing and basically wearing ourselves out until we get to some sort of agreement and see some things on the other side that make sense. We have to respect the differences of opinion and try to meet in the middle, because compromise is the only way that we succeed through this. Otherwise, it's just a civil war of ideas, and nobody's going to win there because each side just keeps pushing and pushing until we're a nation so divided that maybe we just split up into two different territories and all the people with the PC liberal left mindset go to the West Coast and everybody on the right goes to the east, and then middle America, I don't know what the fuck we're going to do because it seems like we're the most mixed of anything. But the point being is that this cancel culture bullshit has gotten out of hand. And the reason that it's gotten that way or been allowed to run rampant is because nobody stood up and said, hey, motherfucker, sit down and let's talk this out. You think you're right. Don't tell me you're right. Convince me. Discuss it, and then hear me out. You got to reach across the aisle. You got to discuss it with the other side. And this trying to tell everybody that their differing views are terrible and shouldn't be heard is not the way to go about it. Interact with the show on Twitter at What Do We Call It? That is at What Do We Call It? You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/group/What Do We Call It podcast show. For the What Do We Call It podcast, I'm Jmann. And that's the end.